What's going on, guys? Okay, so this is going to be the first video in a three-part series of squats, okay? I'm going to break it right down to its basic form of bodyweight squats and then eventually progress on to some goblet kettlebell squats and then eventually on to some barbell back squats. Okay, so break it right down to its basic form. I'll try to keep this video as short as possible. Sometimes you get carried away and I can't stop talking about some stuff when it comes to coaching. Okay, so I'm going to break it down basic form, bodyweight squat to start. Three things to remember in our bodyweight, in our squats. Number one is positioning, feet position and torso positioning. Number two is bracing, and number three is our breathing. Okay, so first thing is positioning. Feet are going to be about shoulder distance apart. Okay, so just outside of our hip distance. You can see that. Okay, just outside of hip distance. Toes are slightly pointed out. Okay, when we descend into our squat, our knees are going to go the same direction as our toes, okay, whenever we're put into our squat. So, like I say, that position, a lot of people make the mistake whenever they begin to descend into their squat, starting with their knees first. So a lot of people will do this, okay, and their squat ends up like this at the bottom, okay. Try to get into the habit of that. If you do that, what we want to do is starting with our hips first. We want to push our bum slightly back first, then we begin to descend into that squat, okay. So, keeping our chest up, keeping the weight on our heels. I always say to people, lift your toes inside your trainer, not like lift your toes like this, just inside your trainer, lift your toes so that we're ensuring we're pushing through the ball and the heel of the ball of our foot and the heel of our foot and not through the front of our toes. Okay, so chest up, drive through those heels, lock the legs out, squeeze the bum at the top. Okay, so hips go back, stand down to the squat, keeping the weight on our heels, drive through those heels and squeeze the bum at the top. Okay, now with our knees, making sure that they're driving the same direction as our toes. A lot of people will come down to their squat, their knees might sort of cave in like this, slightly going forward. Okay, or sometimes they'll come down good into their squat and they'll press out of their squat with a slight cave of one side of our hips. A lot of that time comes from our weak glutes, okay? So just to try to ensure that we're keeping our knees pointed out, okay? Because if we don't, over time, you'll start to get pains in your hips or maybe in your knees, okay? If you squat like this and you're pushing through the balls of your toes, if you're pushing through your toes rather than on your heels, a lot of the time this forces the weight into your knees and you might start to get pain in your knees over time. The same thing goes for squatting and dropping our hips in, okay? We want to make sure that we're driving the knees out because you'll start to get pains in your hips or your knees. Like, here we go, I'm starting to talk now. I'll get full in the depth of this if I don't stop talking. Okay, so that's our position, right? So feet just outside of hips, toes slightly pointed out, chest up tall. Next is our bracing, okay? So as you begin to descend into your squat, you're going to take a breathe in, tense your core, push the hips back, keep the chest up tall, which is keeping all the weight on our heels. Drive through those heels, squeeze your bum at the top. Breathe in, core tense, bum back, keep the chest up, lifting those toes inside our trainers, drive through those heels, and squeeze the bum at the top. Okay, it's important to breathe in and brace, maybe not so much with bodyweight, but get into the habit of it because if we're loading ourselves with a little bit of weight, the last thing you want to be doing is exhaling, relaxing your muscles at the bottom of the squat whenever you're loaded with some weight, because you're vulnerable then to hurt yourself and hurt your back. Okay, so for example, if I had a weight, breathe in, tense my core, push the bum back, descend into the squat, keeping the knees pushed out, breathe in, tense your core, driving through those heels, right up, and squeeze the bum at the top. Okay guys, that's the basic bodyweight squat. Very important for squats, that everybody's doing squats, not only for building muscle, but also because we're strengthening, increasing the muscle of our hamstrings and our glutes, our posterior chain. A lot of back injuries and pain comes from having weak glutes and hamstrings. This is for another video. I start getting talking into this as well. Okay, so it's important to be squats. We're strengthening our posterior chain to avoid getting pain as we get older. Also for building muscle. Also because we're working such large muscles, it's going to have a higher metabolic rate. It's going to increase our metabolism. So we'll have a higher metabolic rate, which means we're going to burn calories and burn fat faster. So it's very important for fat loss, very important for building muscle, very important for strengthening our backs. Okay guys, so that's our basic bodyweight squat. I'll get into another video with some kettlebells, some goblet squats and stuff in our next video. Okay guys?